Hi guys, in today's tutorial we're going to be painting some Imperial Fist Eliminators with Camo Cloaks from start to finish. But first of all I want to say a huge thank you to airbrushes.com who provide me with all my airbrush equipment. If you check the description box down below you'll find a direct link to their web store where you can find out more great products that they sell. Okay, as always guys, this is going to be a long video, so go get comfortable, grab yourselves a nice hot drink, or maybe my personal favourite, an ice cold beer, and we'll start the tutorial. I'll start off by priming the miniature using Alclad 2's Lacquer Primer Grey. It's very important to note with Alclad primers that you need to be very well ventilated and also wearing a respirator. Another thing to note is that the airbrush that you're using has to have PTFE solvent proof seals. The reason for this is the lacquer paint is known as a hot liquid and it will damage lesser quality airbrushes, so make sure that your airbrush is able to be used with Alclad lacquer paints. I'm using an Iwata Eclipse airbrush that I got from airbrushes.com and it's perfect to use these paints with. I'm priming the miniatures at about 20 psi and 3 to 4 inches away from the model. I'm just getting a nice even smooth coverage all over the models. Now we're going to base coat the miniatures using Games Workshop's base paint Avalon Sunset. It's important to note that the paint needs to be thinned down, and I use airbrush medium from the Army Painter for this. This is a fantastic airbrush medium, and not only does it thin down the paint, but it also helps the flow of paint from the airbrush as well. To thin down the paint using the Army Painter's airbrush medium, I look for a creamy consistency, so like single cream. If you find that it's not spraying out of the airbrush correctly, add a little bit more of the airbrush medium, and vice versa. If you're finding that it's too thin, add a little bit more paint back to the mix. Now we're going to create a highlight using Vallejo's premium colour yellow. It's important to note that when we're doing this we're actually going to come from a specific angle, so about 45 degrees from the very top of the miniature. We're just painting with this basic yellow colour from Vallejo premium colour range, and it's going to create a really nice highlight towards the tops of the miniatures, and underneath the miniatures you're going to be left with that deeper yellow Avalon Sunset colour. Now we're going to create some deep shading on the miniature using Games Workshop Shade Paint Cassandori Yellow. I'm careful not to let the Cassandori yellow pull too much on the surface of the model because I don't want stains left behind, but I do coat it over the entirety of the model. That's just to add a little bit more depth, but more importantly to add that really nice shading in all the recesses of the miniature. Now we're going to base coat the camo cloaks using surface primer from Vallejo US Olive Drab. I thin this down a little bit with Water Plus from Instar Paints, and as you can see it flows really nicely on the miniature. You don't have to use Water Plus from Instar, you can just use regular water, but I find I get better results by using Water Plus. Now we're going to create the first camo cloak effects using Vallejo Game Air Charred Brown. You can spend a long time trying to get a camo effect by hand painting all the patterns, but we're going to cheat a little bit. We're going to use an Art Tool FX template from airbrushes.com, and here you can see I've pulled off a little bit of the template and I'm just using it to mask certain areas of the camo cloak, and as you can see that charred brown is coming through really nicely. It's important to note that I've dropped the PSI down to about 15 and I'm working really closely to the mask, as I don't want to get too much overspray outside of the mask of the Art Tool template. Again, another view of me applying the charred brown onto the camo cloaks, and as you can see it gives a really nice effect. If for whatever reason you can't actually buy the Art Tool template from airbrushes.com, you can actually do freehand with the airbrush. You have to get super close, and here I've got the needle cap off the airbrush as well, so be very careful not to damage the needle of your airbrush. But as you can see, I'm just placing down that charred brown onto the camo cloak, and we're just going to get some really nice subtle blends with the charred brown. Now we're going to use Vallejo Game Air Goblin Green. This is going to be the final layer onto the camo cloaks that are really going to make them pop. Again, I'm using that mask. And we're just going to pull it away and show you the results. Now we're going to use Vallejo Metal Colour Exhaust Manifold. It's important to know that these are designed for airbrushing, but don't let that fool you. The metal colour range from Vallejo hand brush paint beautifully as well. Most people use Nuln Oil to wash their metallics. I actually prefer the look of Agrax Earthshade washing over guns and that sort of thing, but it is a preference, so if you prefer Nuln Oil, then use Nuln Oil on the weapons. The pouches were painted with Games Workshop's XV88, and then they're getting a wash of Agrax Earthshade as well. The base was painted in charred brown with XV88 highlights, and I think that's all I forgot to film. So here we have our 3 finished Imperial Fist Eliminators. I really hope you've enjoyed this tutorial, guys, and if you have, please hit the like button, but even more so, leave a comment. I really enjoy reading all your comments. They really do brighten up my day, so pop a comment down below. Maybe let me know what you'd like to see in future or what you thought of this tutorial. Lastly, I want to say a huge thank you to airbrushes.com once again for supplying me with all the airbrush products that I need to paint my miniatures, and thank you very much for taking the time out of your day to watch this video, guys, and I'll catch you in the next one.